Thanks, Andy, and I'm sorry for moving the agenda around somewhat today, but I'm pleased to see there's not a nice sculpture of myself next to me at this moment in time, so thanks for that. So, yeah, just to say, look, it gives me real pleasure, and it's a privilege to be stood here today on our 20-year anniversary. It's an event, and I'd like to thank everybody on behalf of the Trust for supporting us today, because it really does mean a lot when people have come from the far end of the country. It's a wet November day on a Friday, not too far away from Christmas, and we also note that it's also Black Friday, so I do appreciate everybody coming. Andy's given me a few prompts here, and he's put a little bit. It would be good to give your personal reflection on your time at the Trust over the last 20 years. Well, what we've got through in the last 20 years as an organisation is absolutely phenomenal. Where would I start? I think the first thing I have to say is we have always been blessed with a core of trustees who are so dedicated to the cause of coalfields regeneration and have the communities right at the heart of everything they do. And from a personal point of view, it's been a privilege to lead the organisation after the last 9 years or so, be involved in it right from the beginning when we were set up, mainly, as most of you will remember, as a grant-giving organisation. But it's been a great personal pride to be able to lead the organisation through some difficult times, as we'll get on to later, as we've got the context of austerity to go through. But from my own personal appreciation, I could not have done that without the support of the chairman, Peter McNestry. He showed faith in me. He gave me the support that I needed when others may have doubted me. So to that, there's a personal thanks to Peter. During our time, we invested over £300 million in projects that have benefited over 2 million people living in former mining communities. This includes helping over 25,500 people into work, improving the skills and qualifications of over 1.3 million people, and engaging over 250,000 in activities that have improved their health and well-being, and supported hundreds of community facilities, which is so important in providing a space for people to meet and take part in activities. And we've got some great examples today of what difference this can make to communities. I'm sure earlier Peter provided the backdrop to the activities and the funding in the early years. But when we had a coalition government from, I think, around about October 2010, May 2010, we wondered what would happen to the Trust. So, because you'll all recall the bonfire of the Quangos. We all knew that expenditure had to be cut. But because of the effort that had been put in by the staff team and trustees over the years, our record shone out. And even though the National Audit Office inquired into the whole coalfields programme, we come out of that really well. So, DCLG, as it was then, in March 2011, announced that we'd had a £30 million package over the next 2 years. This is just for England, not Scotland and Wales. And on that basis, we had to submit a business plan demonstrating a new approach and a sustainable business model. And once that was approved, there was a potential for a further £22 million to make the transition and implement the plan. With no mean feat. Having said that, we have received no more funding from Whitehall since March 2015. Now, this resulted in a full restructure of all our resources in England, the phasing out of our regional offices, a contraction of our grant programme and in-house delivery teams, while at the same time trying to maintain a level of provision and develop a new income-generating activities. It was a huge challenge, particularly on the backdrop of austerity and the pressure on local authorities, who had always been a natural ally of ours. So, we established a renewables programme. We had to change that again because the Chancellor then kept changing the goalposts to make what was investable at one point with a return on no longer worthwhile. And we started to grow a portfolio of investment properties in the coalfields. And from that we moved on to embarking on development of industrial and commercial space for SMEs. And we also took on commercial work for funders such as Sport England. So we had to start developing a number of income streams to make sure that the organisation was sustainable. In addition, we continue to maintain a level of grant support for the communities, not at the same level it was before, but we still managed to keep that going. And also, very importantly, as I've referred to, the devolved administrations in both Scotland and Wales continued to fund us directly, which was very much appreciated at a time when really our backs were against the walls. And they continue to fund us directly to this day. While we were doing all this, we also knew that the communities that we're here to serve and the voluntary community sector were struggling as resources became stretched, and it was vital that we raised the profile of these challenges. So, in 2014, we commissioned the Centre for Regional Economic and Social Research at Sheffield Hallam University to report on the state of the coalfields. This was the first report that had been directed at the coalfields for a long, long time. The results came as no surprise, and it was clear that our communities were falling behind in terms of deprivation and quality of life. And as I said, in 2015, we knew our government funding in England had come to an end. So in 2016, we launched a new 3-year strategy, making it our mission to tackle the employment, skills and health and well-being challenges that are so prominent in our communities. Our teams develop projects and work with partners to address these challenges, maintaining grant investment, providing practical support to community organisations, safeguarding and developing community facilities, helping communities develop their own action plans and growing our in-house programmes such as Game On and our Employment and Skills Service. Underpinning this work was an aspiration to create assets in communities. This became a key driver for our ambition. To give you an example, we've got 3 case studies from across the United Kingdom. I don't know if you're familiar with a small village in East Durham called Hordon. It's very close to Peterlee. According to the government's indices of deprivation, it's one of the 35 most deprived communities in England, with substantial issues around worklessness, skills and health. There's a particular area in Hordon known as the Numbered Streets. There are a set of terraced houses that were originally built to house miners who worked at the local colliery. These houses have become problematic on a number of reasons, and certainly the local housing authority were under a lot of pressure to invest in their refurbishment. But unfortunately, there was a very high number of void properties at that time, and the place was really just falling into a bad state of disrepair. So as a trust, working with community groups and local stakeholders, we became involved in establishing a hub house in one of the derelict properties. Working with East Durham Trust as a partner, the Hordon Hub House hosts a range of services which targets, among other things, food poverty, housing issues, debt, welfare and loneliness. Now, there are other facilities in Hordon, but that community were literally isolated from all these opportunities, and it wasn't something that would just feel like going into another type of drop-in centre and getting access to these services. So it really was a link to a lot of the other facilities that were in Hordon. So if anybody's ever been to Hordon, I mean, it's quite a nice place actually. When you look at the actual view over the sea and everything else, there's great potential there. But this was a bit of a blight in that community, these numbered streets. And the Trust made a conscious effort to work with the local community, work with local stakeholders to do something about it. Up in Scotland, in the Fife coalfield, the Longannet power station was the last and one of the largest coal-fired power stations that closed in 2016. We engaged with the communities in West Fife and Clackmannanshire who were adversely affected by the closure of the power station and pulled an initiative together where 7 local communities produced a 5-year action plan. One of the biggest achievements so far is the creation of a training enterprise hub in a former bank in Kincardine Town Centre. So that's novel, isn't it? The bank pulls out of the local community, leaves a derelict building right in the crossroads of that community. And to be fair, the community would never have got hold of that building again. I could spend the rest of the afternoon telling you how difficult it was to purchase that building. But the Trust, with the staff in Scotland, we stuck at that task of obtaining that building to bring it back into community use. And it really is, it's made such a difference to that town centre. If you don't believe me, we've got Bob Young here who spends quite a lot of time in it as a Scottish trustee going into, and it's a well-used facility. And it's made such a difference to that local community. That facility provides flexible working space. It's intended to bring together lone workers to combat social isolation and to encourage social enterprises. The hub acts as an innovation hub, a business incubator, and as a community centre where people can collaborate, share resources and hold events. Down in South Wales, anything epitomises the mining communities, it's the valleys. Tredegar is some 30 miles away from Cardiff, so generally, you know, if you're not south of the M4, there can be lots of challenges in the valleys. And in Tredegar, so there's a town of 11,000 people, and it forms part of Gwent Borough. The town's, well, as you can imagine, the economy was originally based on coal mining, and nearby in Ebervale on steel. All these jobs have gone. In 2016, the Trust took over an Ur and Bevan House, a prominent building in the centre of Tredegar. Following refurbishment, immediate priority was to establish a branch of a credit union to begin to offer an alternative to the illegal and high interest rate money lending that had caused so much damage in the area. Further work is underway to address the impact on indebtedness of the rollout of universal credit. A new town centre forum has been established to begin to establish a vision of what Tredegar could be in the future. There's so much discussion about the moment about the NHS. That's where the NHS was actually hatched, in that town. And actually the building, another building just down the road, Tender Circle, the Trust, after 12 months of hard work, has managed just to purchase that building. So again, that can be developed as a community asset going forward. The alternative was an extension to a kebab house. One of the emerging priorities is to tap into the town's rich industrial heritage and culture to promote Tredegar as a health heritage town and as the home of the NHS. As I said recently today, sorry I got delayed, but it was an opportunity to catch up with some of the civil servants who've taken the opportunity to visit Barnsley and look at what can be done in the local communities around here through the idea of the Stronger Towns Fund, should it ever take traction. Well, at Goldthorpe near Barnes, just up the road, we have targeted investment there over recent years. We've built 10 new social housing units, deployed a community engagement coordinator, an employment and skills coach, and working in partnership with the community shop. And I know John were here earlier, John Marrenby had to move on. We've also worked with them to do a lot of work around worklessness. And actually that did lead along to the creation of a new community shop in Athersley, in North Barnsley. A true collaborative approach between the council, who transferred the assets to the trust, company shop, who provided the infrastructure and expertise in establishing the community shop, and our investment to bring the building back to life. Our dedicated community employment skills coach in Athersley works closely with the team at community shop to support people back into work. These are people that are the furthest away from the job market. These aren't people that will go through on the usual statutory schemes. They're just, they'll just not engage with it. We hope to replicate the model of the community shop in other coalfield communities, knowing the positive impact that this has on individuals who live in very difficult situations. These projects would not have happened without collaboration and partnership working with local authorities and third sector and local enterprises. And I think that's so important. We want to continue working with stakeholders on projects that make a difference to our communities. To help fund our social impact work, our investment properties provide necessary income, but this is a means to an end and was conditioned by the government in England when we took the final tranche of the money. We want to regenerate our communities both socially and economically. In 2017, we acquired some land on the former Ollerton Colliery site at Sherwood Energy Village in North Nottinghamshire. Battling a lengthy process of applying to the local enterprise partnership for grant support, we eventually completed Centric in late 2018, a new 32,000 square feet development providing industrial accommodation for SMEs. This is now fully tenanted. It was a total speculative build. There was no tenants to start off with. We and the board backed the management to build that facility. And we begin to get this is that if you build them, they will come. But if you don't build them, there's nowhere for these growing enterprises and new enterprises to develop into. And if that is really going to be the growth strategy going forward, we've got to have infrastructure like that in the heart of our communities, not in the cities. It's got to be in our communities. As I said, this is definitely a model we want to replicate across the United Kingdom. and it gives me great pleasure today to officially launch our new strategy for 2019-2024. We just made it to 2019, so it's November already, and December this week. And on the very first National Coalfields Day, you should all have a copy, and it communicates our aim to secure reinstatement of our funding in England, to create a new coalfields investment fund and maintain our grant support in Scotland and Wales. Many former mining areas are not seeing the benefits of the millions and billions, and Derek alluded to this earlier when he was talking, being invested in the core cities and major towns. I'm not against the core cities being invested in or any of the major towns, but the coalfield communities deserve their fair share, and they aren't getting it. We want to build a new industrial space to enable small to medium businesses to locate in our communities. We know there's demand, but it requires the support of government to make the funding model work. We will reinvest the income generated into the local community and into our programmes that tackle the employment, skills and health and wellbeing challenges that have been so clearly shown by the last two State of the Coalfields reports in 2014 and 2019. So it's a virtuous circle. You build them, you fill them, the income comes in and it goes back into the community. In an ideal world, I would not be stood here today talking to you. The coalfields would be typical of any other community, with equal opportunities for our population and no requirement for government intervention. However, the legacy of the closure of the industry still remains. And that new report that we recently commissioned goes to show you that things have not changed to that degree. And it's very important that we keep the pressure on the politicians, whoever they may be, to understand that principle, that some of the physical scars that were left after the coalfields were closed, yes, they've gone away, but there's still issues around the social regeneration of these communities and the opportunities that are required to make these communities the places they once were. I think what is heartening is every time we do this job, we see what the communities can achieve with usually very modest resources actually that the Trust gives out, and you give so much back, and I really do appreciate that, and I know the team do. So that's a really big thank you, because it just proves the argument when you go down there to say, we're not talking about massive amounts of money here, that could make a big difference. I think the coalfields offer tremendous opportunities. There are fantastic examples of how regeneration can change the fortunes of communities. We've got a spirit and determination. Like I say, it's represented by all of you here today. So my challenge to everyone in this room is to continue to raise the profile of the coalfields, put pressure on the politicians to take notice of us, and continue to create a better future for the 5.7 million people we call our communities. We're also aware that if the mining communities, which are scattered around the United Kingdom, were all put into one place as one region, they would be the most deprived region in the United Kingdom. And again, that's another message that needs to be, again, pushed forward to the politicians. Just because there's bits here and bits there, there's 5.7 million people that have never recovered from the closure of the mining industry to the degree that they should have done. And the deprivation levels are still unacceptable. Finally, I'd just like to thank again our trustees and all our staff. I've only got a small staff team of just about 40 people, and they just work so hard and so tirelessly and so committed to the cause. But I'd also like to thank our partners, associates, and most importantly, the organisations and community groups who make a difference every day. Thank you.